Well, it seems that what had happened was that Sherlock Holmes and his friend Watson had gone camping. Now, that doesn't sound like it fits Sherlock Holmes, but bear with me on the story. So they'd gone camping, and it was in the middle of the night, and Sherlock wakes up and he nudges Watson. He says, "Watson, what do you see?" And Watson says, "Oh, Sherlock, I see, the North Star has guided us to this spot, and I see the Milky Way that is over us, and I see," and about that time, Sherlock hisses, and he says, "Watson, you idiot, someone stole our tent." Sometimes what we do in coaching is to have our tent stolen, because of that, we see things in a better way. We see things in the universe that we never would have seen if our tent was still there. And it's important as we start to look at this, that as we talk to people, many times they are still in their tent. And even when we get them out of the tent, they may just feel like they had the tent stolen and not see anything else. So I thought that would be a value for you to realize that there are perspectives that can help us and help others. Sometimes can be distorted. Anyway, so now we're going to talk a little bit about SMART goals. The S, as you can see already, you have the answer in front of you, is specific. Let's read this. It clearly defines the details where you're going. Now, when we were talking with Chad, if we just said, well, I need to exercise more, that's not real specific, is it? But if he says, exercise is one of the elements that he may need to develop, and so we may get more specific in the goals and saying, in 3 months from now, what would you like to be doing consistently with your exercise? And I'm going to try to push him into the fact when he says, I'm going to be walking more, I'll say, well, how much are you doing now? And he'd tell me. And say, so 3 months from now, how much do you think you would be walking? And I may even be more specific and say, when do you have the time to do that? Will that be before work or afterwards? And is it always walking you want to do? And the reason we're narrowing it down and being more specific is because it's more measurable, which is the next one on here. So measurable is the second one. And the reason we want to measure it is the same reason when I'm driving down the road, I'm looking at my clock, I'm looking at how many miles we have to go, and I can measure how long it's going to take me to get there, and I feel more comfortable and relaxed having the picture more clear. What if the sign just said, well, you're on your way, or it's somewhere ahead of you, you're making some progress, but you don't know if I'm making progress it'll take me 2 years to get there, or progress it'll take me 10 minutes. So I have to be able to measure it to be able to describe that. The third aspect of SMART goals is attainable. I'm not going to set a goal, and in fact, a coach is going to help you make sure that it's realistic or attainable. If a person only, let's say a person has really bad arthritis in their knees, and they say, I want to be jogging and running, 2 miles every day. It's probably not attainable, and so I'm going to talk to them about what if we did some non-weight bearing exercise, and there I might make some advice and say, do you think that the way your knees are is going to allow you to accomplish that goal? And is there something else that would achieve our same goal that really is attainable? Relevant, what are you willing to let go of? And on the scale of 1 to 10 how important it is. So relevant is importance. What if we chose a goal or a dream that really wasn't that important to you, but you just kind of wanted to get me off your back or say something, and we found out later that there's something that was much more important to you. So I'm going to look at things that are important, things that are priorities. So that's where the R comes in on that. And the last one is time sensitive. Now we use these SMART goals not only for setting that 3-month goal, but we also use it for doing those little action steps that we kind of introduced you to before. So we use these in both of those areas. When we look at time sensitive, if we're giving 3 months, is there enough time to accomplish that? The other thing is when I'm talking about action steps, which is what are you going to do this week? How many of you have decided sometime I'm going to go to the gym after work, or I'm going to go to the gym and exercise more often? And so you got your gym bag in your car, and you get started too late to work, so you can't go in the morning. And then you were thinking about you might go at lunchtime, but things got busy then, so you put it off. And you keep, in your mind, you keep saying, I'm going to exercise today. The fact you're going to exercise today is not specific enough to help you accomplish it. You keep putting it off, don't you? I can keep putting it off. But if you decide, I'm going to do it in the morning before work, now I'm going to get up early enough, I'm going to plan for that, I am going to get there, and I know I have enough time to do that and still get to work, and it's done. And so the first thing in the day is very helpful, but even if I plan for it to be done after work, the chances of it being accomplished are much greater if that's my plan and I can fit everything into it. But if you are real general and just say I'm going to exercise today, it won't help. And that's why you as coaches, as you talk with people, you are going to be guiding them to something that will help them be successful. And if you know if it's not time sensitive, they probably will not be successful. So you see how you are helping them set things up and being set up for success. So being time sensitive, when will you start? What time of day even, before work, after work? Now the goal setting, we wanted to, with Chad, we wanted to give him more that first day that would get him started. So let's continue along the whole process. So Chad, you're stuck in this because now I'm going to use you through this process. So you had that dream. And if you don't mind, what I would like you to do is to describe what would you be doing 3 months from now consistently if you were on your way to reaching that dream?
Well, by getting the proper rest, diet, etc.
Okay.
My goal is to, whatever I do it 100% and feel happy doing it, feel healthy doing it. So to have that physical, mental strength during the work hours, as well as when getting off work, to be able to go for long mountain bike rides, and still have the stamina and for my playtime.
Okay, so you talked about doing some mountain bike stuff, walking. Did I hear that? I'm sorry.
No,
you don't like that as much. Okay. It sounds like you're not doing those things that you want to do right now.
Well, because of the time in the day, there's not a whole lot of recreation time. Okay. Plus the winter weather.
So 3 months from now.
3 months from now would be ideal.
You'd be consistently doing what?
Working and hopefully playing on the bicycle. Okay.
So let's look at that bike just a little bit. 3 months from now, how often a week would you see yourself actually getting out on the bike?
4 days a week.
4 days a week? Would that be after work or?
Well, it depends on what time of season we're talking.
Okay.
3 months from now, though, it would be afterward.
Okay, so afterward. You know, that's an interesting thought that you brought up, is how we fit this into different times. What would it be like right now? What time of day would you be exercising?
I wouldn't be.
You wouldn't be?
No, it gets dark too early.
Okay.
And the snow and whatnot, yeah.
Would you be interested in looking at any kind of activity that could fit into this time of weather?
Well, there is other workouts that keep you in shape, cardiovascular, for prepping you for bicycling, as well as an exercise bicycle on site that is indoors.
Is that something you'd be interested in doing maybe during the weather change?
Yes.
Okay. You have the equipment already?
Yes.
Okay. Describe to me how you would do exercise, say, prior to the good weather coming about.
Well, I think from a training standpoint, it would be a good idea for me to go work out indoors as in the same time period I would come springtime, after work, after maybe a quick snack.
I like that, yeah. Sounds good. So if we were going to set up a 3-month goal and what it would look like, what you'd be doing consistently, would you want to describe maybe what you're doing now during bad weather and then what you'd be doing later when it's good weather? That way you're not putting it off because of weather changes?
Yeah, I think I'd like to get more into some cardiovascular training to strengthen my lung capacity and heart rate.
Okay.
And then simulate cycling motion with my legs on either the machine and or with weights or.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say, and let me see if as I describe this, see what it sounds like to you. While the weather's bad, and you had said, what, 3 to 4 days a week, was it? 4 days a week?
4 days a week.
Okay. You'd mentioned 4 days a week. So 3 months from now, you're going to be at least 4 days a week doing the simulated riding, and then when the weather's good, you're going to be doing actually riding out. Does that sound like?
That would be ideal. If the weather permits, then I'll be on my bicycle. If not, I'll be in the gym.
Okay, so you've got it covered either way. That sounds really good. And it sounds like more than what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be when I clarified, one thing I noticed I was going into a closed question that was just getting some yes or no. And so then I thought of how can I ask him to describe that a little bit more. So I found myself doing that, and you'll catch yourself doing that as well when you hear just one answer back, and it was like, oh, that didn't go, he didn't describe very long. So then I look at how I can ask you information that you would describe that. We also were able to solve a problem that he had where he had put off the exercising because of the weather. And so then we ended up with a plan that would work either way. Also, I didn't tell him what to do. I just asked him, do you have something you could do when the weather is bad? And so again, I didn't say, here's what you have to do, but we brought up the issue and then had him solve that problem. So now you kind of have a 3-month goal, and I would be a little more specific, but I'm not going to do it right now, on which days you would do it. But he would, in 3 months, know that he was on his way if he saw that he was doing those type of things. And then later, when we get to this point, we're going to talk about the action plan. Say, we've talked about the 3-month goal. Now we're going to talk about what are you going to do today, tomorrow, this week, and we'll break it down then. How'd that sound? Did it help you a little bit to see that process? Okay. So we did our demonstration. We're going to look at this 3-month goal. You're going to write it down. And in fact, again, I'm going to give you an assignment. We're not going to do it right now. But remember, we wanted you to write your dream. Each of you has a dream. sometime this week I want you to then write down a 3-month goal. What would it look like that you would like to accomplish that would help you towards that dream? Now we're going to look at action steps. As you think about it, we haven't talked too long. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with Chad on this. We got a vision, we got a 3-month dream, but then I want to leave him today with something he can do today and tomorrow instead of just putting it off. And we'll go into more detail. Even if I have to skip some things, I want to get into that. I want to set a general framework for the plan, and then so a person says, okay, that sounds good. Later as we call and talk, we'll talk about the process, we'll mold it around a little bit, but we want to at least get a good framework, we want to get it started, and we want to get him on his way in less than an hour on the phone and discussion. So we don't waste a lot of time. So action steps. This is really where the rubber meets the road. Let's describe a little bit again on this 3-month goal compared to action steps. Let's talk about how we often, when we want to do this New Year's resolution, typically what we are doing is, it's like I'm downstairs and I want to get up to the 2nd floor. And our typical process is we are jumping, trying to get up to that 2nd floor, and we're not accomplishing it. Well, the coach comes along and says, there's some stairs right here. Why don't you use the stairs? You can get up there better. So that's what a coach does, and then that's what the action steps are here, and that is, let's take little steps to get there. And because you have constantly failed trying to jump up to that 2nd floor, we're going to help you with little steps to get there. So the weekly, and I actually do bi-weekly or 2-week action goals. And the reason I did that, even though in all the training I've had, they always called them weekly steps. The reason is because 1 week goes by really too fast. And if I have weekly action steps, I'm changing it. I'm having to constantly change those a lot faster, and I think it's a little too much effort to make this happen. So I do 2-week goals. It doesn't mean that in the middle of that, or in that first week, if it looks like we need to adjust it a little bit, we can't do that. But at least we have something spelled out that we're looking at for that period of time. They're small, they're manageable steps toward the SMART goal. And so I am, again, these are helping me reach the 3-month goal, and the 3-month goals help me reach my vision and my dream. An action step's a single task. Let's say in our 3-month goal, we might have set out that I wanted to do some nutrition changes, I wanted to do some exercise, and I wanted to do some stress relief. Well, when I talk about action steps, I'm just going to take 1 or at the very most 2 of those during that week. So I'll ask them, what's the most important one for you to start working on? So it's a single task, something I can do now and move toward my goal. There's different steps. And the preparatory step is a very important one. And I'll tell you why. Let's say I have somebody who wants to make a dietary change. It would not be wise for me to say, okay, let's start this week in getting rid of blah, 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 and changing this. First of all, the person doesn't have any recipes. Maybe he or she doesn't know what restaurants to go to. And so I've thrown them into a goal that they're not prepared to succeed with. But if I use that first week as preparation, and sometimes even 2 weeks for preparation, and we say, what are some of the things you would need to have available for you to succeed with this when we finally start doing it? Well, I don't even know how to cook tofu. I don't even know where to get things at the store. And so I would give them an assignment and say, this next week, or maybe even 2 weeks, what if you, when you go out to eat, you start looking at the menu and finding the things that you are going to pick when you start this. And we do that with a stop smoking program. We have them plan ahead, start thinking and planning, get their car detailed out, get rid of the smoke smell. We do all those things so that when they stop, they have everything ready for them. We want to do this in the same way when we're starting to make lifestyle changes, and dietary changes is a big part of that too. So preparatory is certainly a good place to go, and we often skip that because we are so interested into change. We want them to change right now, when preparation is often skipped, but it's important to have. These begin small steps, and then we build them into bigger ones, and we are moving forward motion. We'll talk quite a bit today on change. And again, we're often interested we want people to make those big changes. We want them to become vegan. We want them to stop smoking. We want them to lose those 50 pounds. We are after this big action, this big change. And we want that to happen as quickly as possible, and we very often skip the preparation. If a person is moving forward in the process, maybe they weren't real interested in making the change, and now they are at least thinking about it. So we start saying, why don't you read some articles that I have that would get you excited about making this change? Now they're moving forward, aren't they? Now they're going to bed a half hour earlier instead of staying up till midnight. We haven't changed drastically, but we're moving in the right direction. We're starting to explore some food options. We're moving the right direction. That's what you want to be thinking about, and it's a different thought than what we often do when we want people to make big changes. So as long as we're moving the right direction, it may take 2 years, but you are starting to change the mind instead of just the body. These 2-week action steps are probably the most important aspects of coaching, and so I want you to see how we interact with a person on choosing these. So let's just say with Chad, I want to brainstorm for some things that he could do. And we kind of did that, but we want to do this a little bit more. So if we were talking about he wanted to ride his bike more and get out and be out in nature probably and stuff like that, and to start having some energy, there may be several ways we could do that. And so I'm going to have him do brainstorming, and the critical aspect of what brainstorming is that no choice is wrong. All we're going to do is anything that comes into your mind that would help you along that path, we're going to throw out there. So would say, this week, is there any preparation that you have to do to start along that path? Getting equipment, moving things up from your basement that you have, maybe you already have equipment. Is there any of those kind of things that has to happen so that when we start this, it'll be ready? And then we're going to look at, is it just the writing that you need to do, or is there other stretching and other things? Think about all the things that might help you along that path, and let's start listing them. So we'd start writing these out, and we like to have maybe at least 5 options, and we call this a what else list because the coach is saying, what else could you do? What else can you do? And you keep doing that. The next one is the ideal if all obstacles are removed, because a person might tell you, well, there's no way I could do that because I don't have enough money to buy a bike. I can't join the gym because, and you've heard people like that, I can't do this, I can't do that because of this. And so you say, what if you had all the money you needed for doing this? What if you had the gym membership or whatever? Let's just talk about if all those obstacles were removed, what would you do? You see what's happening there? We're starting to get them to think without the negative thing, I can't do that because of this or this or this. And once they start thinking that way, now they have a possibility. Now we can start saying, but maybe you do have this available. Or based on this, it doesn't look like that's as big of an obstacle as we thought. And since you thought that would be a good idea, then let's proceed with that. So that's a good way to do it, is if all the obstacles are removed. The other is some people have strengths for certain things they have succeeded with in life. And they are saying, well, I can't do that. And we say, well, tell me something you really have been successful with. Oh, well, I do this such and such really well. So now we use their strengths on that and say, well, that's almost like this situation, isn't it? What if we use those strengths that you just described to help you accomplish this one too? I could see that happening. So instead of them using some other method that they aren't very good at, you're taking the things that they are strong with and using those to help them reach their goal. So, and you can see you're not going to be able to remember all these things, so you pull out your paperwork later when you start talking to someone and say, okay, what are the things I would help them with? And now you've got it all written down so you can at least remember it. Thinking on a grayscale, when a person's trying to make a lifestyle change and they're thinking about the things they can do, many times they are limited because they want the perfect plan. Well, I can't do that. I'm still thinking about the best way I could do that. I'm still thinking about the perfect plan, and so they're limiting themselves because they haven't come up with a perfect plan. And so you want them on this brainstorming to say, what if we found something that just kind of barely got you going on that? What if we found something that it wasn't perfect, but it was better than what you're doing? See what we're saying? It's okay to do the grayscale, something that wasn't perfect, because we'll find that that is going to help accomplish some things too. So the next thing, when you're making lifestyle changes, sometimes it's not fun because all we're talking about is the things I have to do. And I love to throw in some fun stuff and say, you know, you've given me all these things that are effort and hard, and you have to do this because you're going to die otherwise or whatever. And let's talk about things you want to do. Well, I've always wanted to, ice skate or whatever, And so we say, let's think about that as part of your exercise. Something you want to do instead of just have to do. So it moves them into some fun stuff that we didn't have before. So there's a worksheet here that you can look at, and it's a coach's weekly worksheet. Again, this is a helpful tool. It's on page 20. It's a coach's worksheet, and there's two different ways you can do this, and you'll look at the other one here later. But if you look at this, you have a worksheet for so-and-so. I've got his name. You have their phone number, you have their wellness vision. Wow, you got them dialed in here. I'm keeping track of this information. And then I have the 3-month goal. We talked about riding the bike, doing some simulation riding when it's bad weather. So I made some and we've talked a little bit about supporters. So this is kind of a summary of that material. And then this is a 2-week goal, and I have goal number 1. Maybe there's 2 or 3 that we wanted to work on. And I write them down. Now in this case, it has some choices such as fitness or nutrition or stress or weight. I'm just going to circle the one that it kind of is working on. And because I have those other ones there, every once in a while I'll look at that and say, this person really sounds stressed, and we're not doing anything on stress. So I might even suggest that. Or you think nutrition would make any difference? If you're not quite ready for that, we'll put it off until you're ready. But let's be thinking about nutrition for later on. Now you have goal number 1, you have the strategy, you have a comment, so as we're talking about that, I'm making some notes on there. And then what's this percent here? I got 2 different percents. Well, actually I have the answer here, it's written in. It's what percentage of their goal did they reach? Question? Oh, what we do for stress? Now, I would try to get it from them, but sometimes they wouldn't know what to work on. Say, what if you took a little bit of time each day to just kind of unwind? Maybe listen to some music or something like that. Would that release stress? Would that be something that would be kind of exciting for you to try? And then tell me what you think would work best for you in that. So I gave them some ideas perhaps, but I wanted to find out from them. So that would be a stress reliever. It could be at the end of the day, and these are, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking that the Bible, reading the Bible for a while, I have some ideas, but I'm gonna try to get them to come up with some without me telling them. So it was something. What are some things that you have done in the past that really have made you calm and things you could do during the day? You see, so I'm setting them up to find out what works for them. But the percentage of success, let's say Chad decided I wanted to ride the bike 4 days a week. I want to spend at least an hour doing that. And I want to do that after work. You see how I was specific on 3 points? Specifically what we were doing, how often, and when. And the reason is because I want to see how successful I am if we didn't have those specifics. So at the end of the week, and I'm calling them up, and I say, Chad, I want to hear how things went. You had those goals and so forth that we'd set up. And in fact, this week, you were going to start out by just writing 2 days this week and a minimum of a half hour. And he says, well, Rick, I rode 3 days. Now you see, what happened is he wanted the 4 days eventually, and I encouraged him to make his goal for just 2 days that week, and he did 3. If he had set the goal for 4, and he only did 3, he'd say, oh, Rick, didn't get my 4. But because we set it at 2, he said, you can put down 120% on my success because I did 3 days instead. So I always encourage them to set the goal low, but encourage them the fact that they can exceed that goal. It seems like it's just human nature when we set this goal and we don't quite reach it and we're discouraged. What we could have done is set ourselves up to where we set a smaller goal, we went over it, and because of how we set it up, our attitude changes. So I think it is important to help, and that's where a coach again comes in to say, that's really encouraging that you want to do that much, but how much are you doing right now? Well, I'm not doing any. So any little amount that you do is progress along your goal, is moving forward, isn't it? Do you mind if I encourage you to set it for just 1 or 2 days? Which one would you like? See, that way, and I said, hey, you can write 4. But let's set a goal that's a little above where you're at now, and that's what you will do. So we put down the percentage, and I keep track of that. And then if they wanted to work on something else, I've got room to make some notes on that. So that's kind of the worksheet. Now there is another worksheet on the next page, which is page 21. And this is one, to be honest with you, this is one that my friend that does coaching set up, and she sent it to me. And this next one's one that I set up. So we have, on this one, 2-week goals. So we've actually have it in 3 different places. You can write nutrition, stress, and others. But then we have boxes to keep track of each day. Now, because our goals were so specific, you might say, Rick, the boxes are so small, I can't write anything in there. Or someone else looks at it and says, look at all I have to fill out. No, you know what, we're just working on activity. Forget those other ones right now. That's in case you do something there. And because the goal was so specific, I was going to ride after work so long. All I have to do on Tuesday here, if that's when I did it, is write down the time. 30 minutes, 45 minutes. That's all I had to write on there. And then Thursday comes along, I went then, and then I did one Saturday. So I've got it on there, so when Rick calls, I can look at what I did, and I already know what my percentage is. So I do think it's helpful to have, for many people, to have a chart there. Now, if you're talking to them over the phone, I may have to just have them write it down, or I might email this to them, if that's a possibility. Some people don't handle that as well as others. So these are forms you can use, and I'm going to send you a link to my Dropbox. So any of these forms, any of these programs you have, you can get the original. Instead of saying, well, Rick, do I just keep copying this? Or you can get the original so you can actually have it ready to send to somebody, and it's in good quality. So action steps. So Chad, we needed to do something this week, don't we? We talked a little bit about that goal, and it sounded like, from what you told me, it was writing 4 days a week. This is in 3 months from now. I think you told me you're not doing anything now. What would be that first little step to kind of open the door and get things started toward that goal? But something that would get you there.
Well, I suppose hit the gym maybe twice a week for half an hour.
Okay. Now, do you have a gym membership? See, I'm going to find out if this is even reasonable. Do you have a gym membership now?
Are we talking reality or?
No, this is a make-believe.
No, I don't have a gym membership.
So maybe even the preparation, if this is really what you want to do, this week, why don't you go in there to the gym, see if you set up the gym membership? If that's the way you want to do it. Wouldn't it be good to have a membership before you start?
My goal is to actually be on my bike outdoors, so I'd hate to waste the money on a membership if I end up not using it.
Remember when we did the brainstorming? In fact, let's look at all the possible things you could do this week, from gym membership to jogging in place, I mean, whatever. Let's just run through any possible thing that you could see that would start you getting stronger. Throw out some ideas for me.
Well, I could do squats or something, I guess, in my living room.
Hey, that's pretty cheap, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sounded like you didn't want to waste money. I think you're on the right track. Any other things?
Well, getting on the bicycle, if the trails are muddy, I could ride the street.
Okay. So you actually have some plans. Remember the phrase was what else? What else could you do? So we're just adding to that brainstorming. You know, the other thing I just heard you say is that the gym membership was, you didn't want to waste the money. What if you didn't have a problem with the money at all, and it was easy to...
Oh, I'd get a membership at the best gym there is.
Okay.
It has swimming pools, hot tubs, saunas. Yeah. Maybe they even have a stationary cycling class. Okay.
I think the fact you just started talking about that gave you some neat pictures of what you could do. And there may be a time when some of those are possible. See, we're utilizing some of these aspects of these questions on brainstorming, thinking grayscale, even if it didn't help you with everything in the right way. So this next week, of all those things that you mentioned to me, let's say we had 5 or 6, what's one of them that you could see yourself doing that would be the most interesting for you?
Oh, I don't like doing them, but squats, I can do the squats.
Okay, so squats would be one. Is that enough for you, do you think, or do you think you want to do something else along with that this week? And it doesn't have to be exercise, it could be some other things you may want to throw in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, trying to fit some sort of, not necessarily what it is, but something to simulate the time of day that my goal is to set a certain time of day aside for my cycling.
I like that.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific thing, but maybe, do something.
I like that. So you're actually going to start making a routine, even if it's not exactly doing the same thing, you at least start the routine. I like that. So even if you did the squats and you set that time, what time would that be that you're going to start fitting this in?
5:30.
5:30, you're going to do something. I like that. So every day, or 3 days a week, how often were you thinking?
Well, for now, since I'm out of shape, maybe half an hour.
Okay. Was this after work or?
After work.
After work, okay. So we have some very specific, and so when I call you next week, I'm kind of excited about, well, how do you feel about kind of having a plan?
Yeah, I think I'm ready for it.
Okay. So we have a plan, and the other thing I'd like to do at the end of our discussion, because we got this hour where we've set up, and so I might summarize and say, hey Chad, I'm really excited about this because you've told me your dream, and I think you're really excited about that. You've looked at what you would be doing in 3 months from now. And then you even have something you can start doing today. I mean, you're off and running. And I just want to remind you I'm going to be there for you. Is this a good time for me to call you next week then?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so let's plan on this time. I'll call, and I'm already looking forward to what you're going to have to share with me, okay? So this will give us an idea of how we have gone process. We've given you those goals. We've given you something to start with today. And it didn't take that long to do that. And it was things you were interested in. Now, as a lifestyle trainer, I might have been listening to that and say, well, he's got to change his diet. Well, I'm going to let you do your own thing for a while. Now, later on, we might throw something out there, but so often we want to control what a person's doing, and I want you to have something that you're comfortable with doing on your own. Because I did think about that. I said, man, this is kind of limited. This is one little area, but I'm going to let you go with that because it's what you were interested in, and I'm going to be there for you for that part. Later on, we'll start thinking about it, and we might see some reason to add something to it. Was that helpful? To at least see that process? So we've gone through all of those. We've actually looked at the reports and looked at the action steps, and we've practiced a little bit. When you come back from the break, we're going to spend most of this next time on change. The whole process of change is a really important thing to understand. So we'll spend our time on that, okay? So take 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here in just a minute.